Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we are back on the Frankenholer. We've done 3 of the 4 corners. There's one left. All right, guys, just want to take a quick moment out to thank this week's video sponsor, Bluetti, and in particular the AC180 portable power station. So this thing is really a very handy unit, particularly for camping and sort of getting out and about. It's got a bunch of really cool features that I think are going to be very handy for me when I head off to the Bathurst 12 hour again. So this has 2 regular 240 volt AC power outputs. They can run a standard full-size fridge for around 7 hours, and then it has a range of DC outputs as well. So you've got 4 USB-A 5 volt 3 amp outputs, and then you've got a really powerful USB-C 100 watt output. Another really cool feature is on the top, it has wireless charging. And on top of all those, it's also got a cigarette lighter output, which is really handy for my tire inflator. So this high power USB-C port is powerful enough to directly power my laptop and charge that up. And while the laptop's charging with no power here in the shed, I can still plug in my power tools and keep working. So to charge it up, you can charge it up via a regular wall socket from 0 to 80% in about 45 minutes, so nice and quick to get it charged. There is also the option of solar charging, so there are optional solar panels you can get with this. It comes with the solar cable to connect it, or if you're sort of traveling while you're driving along, you can actually trickle charge it from a cigarette lighter port in your car. It has a really nice clear display, very easy to see what is going on with the machine, and it's all very intuitive. And there's also a smartphone app to control the unit as well. So I know one of the things that's important with these sort of units is how many charge cycles you can do. And this is recommended for about 3,500 charge cycles out of this unit, which would really be almost once a day for 10 years. So that's pretty good. And it actually uses the lithium iron phosphate battery, so the more stable, safer version of the lithium ion batteries. So one thing I do like about this unit is it's powerful, but still small enough to sort of carry around without too much hassle. And if you want more juice out of it, you can actually get the expander battery packs to add on to this. So Bluetti have actually got an end of financial year sale running the entire length of June, from the 1st to the 30th of June. And they've got a bunch of deals on the site, as well as if you purchase anything, you get in the draw for a bunch of different prizes as well. So go and check them out. Use my link in the description. All right, guys, let's get back to the Frankenholer. All right, guys, welcome back. And those of you watching last week will have seen that I finally finished the passenger side corner of the Frankenholer's cab. If you missed it, I will put a link up above so you can catch up. And like always, subscribe, comment, like the video. All of that stuff helps that algorithm. Those who don't know, this is the Frankenholer. This is my 1950 Ford F600 truck that is currently lying on its back. It doesn't really look like much at the moment because it's a bit of a rusty mess, but we're working on that. And this is going to be going onto the Toyota Coaster bus chassis that I have sitting in the wings waiting to go. So before we do that, we need to get this cab sorted. So there's a few little bits and pieces we need to tackle, but the main thing is the corner of this cab. So let's get stuck straight in. So last week when I was fixing the corner of the cab, one thing that I noticed during editing, and a lot of you Eagle Eye viewers also noticed, is that when I built my hinge reinforcing bracket for the back, that the original actually ties into the outside of the cab, so that when the door is swinging, it's not just hinging off of this front plate, but it's actually sort of triangulated and reinforced. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to go back over to this other side in here and add a reinforcing plate. You can see in here, it's not the prettiest welding, but I have a brace from both sides. Again, it's quite ugly because there's not very good access, but we have the back of that hinge bucket all braced up, and I'm quite happy with that. So I'll just put some primer on it, and we can move on. All right, so we got this week's main event, which is this lower corner, but we can't really see what's going on at this stage. So I think the first thing to do is to start trimming back the rust, and let's see what we're left with and how much we have to repair. All right, so this side is definitely much better than the other side. I don't have anywhere near as much repair work to do. The hinge bucket is okay. It's got a little bit of pitting on this side, which I can touch up, but the rest of it is actually quite solid. Yeah, all this internal brace is quite solid, except for a little bit in here, which I'm going to trim out and just tidy up. But overall, it's actually not too bad.
So I give everything a spray of weld through primer and then start cutting out my sill piece. Then it's a bit of backwards and forwards with the bending. I keep going back to the truck to make sure I'm getting the right angles. So it's a bit of backwards and forwards, and then I have my repair piece. First of all, I'm just tacking it in with a MIG and making sure everything's in the right spot. Now the front edge needs a taper, which I discovered while doing the other side of the truck. So I cut and bend it by hand. Now I'm making the other part of the front sill panel, just making a cardboard template. And then cut it out of my 2mm sheet. Mark it and then weld it in.
All right, well that is looking great. So I've got my taper on this end of the sill panel like I had to do on the other side. It's all pretty much ready to go now. That's much quicker than last time. So what I'm going to do now is just going to go through and start drilling out the Imperial captive nuts for the hinges and replace them with metric.
So as I mentioned last week, I wrap the threads of the bolts in tape just to make sure that the spatter from the MIG doesn't wreck the thread.
All right, so we've got captive nuts in now, all in metric. I'm going to let this cool down completely before I take the bolts out. I find that they bind up a lot. When the heats, things expand and change, and you can wreck threads by pulling them out straight away. It's much better to let them completely cool down and come back later. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start going back to my hammer forms that I made up last time for the other side, and make up this lower piece of the door jamb.
So like before, I cut out my sheet with the overhang that I'm looking for, and then very slowly and gently start tapping it over the hammer form to shrink it into shape.
So I have my hammer form, definitely getting the hang of doing these hammer forms now. Very nice, neat corners here. The captive nuts have all cooled down. I've taken the bolts out. Now it's time to do the last of the hinges and convert that over to metric as well. The trouble is that it's got a bolt stuck in it, doesn't it? I forgot about this one that still has one bolt still stuck.
So this time I actually got quite lucky with a bit of penetrating fluid and then just backwards and forwards with the vice grips. There was enough bolt thread hanging out that I could actually get hold of it and undo it. Then it's just a simple matter of drilling out the holes and mounting my metric hardware and MIG them in. With that done, it's now time to start trimming the hammer form into shape to finish off my door jamb. With that done, it's time to start trimming the rust repair panel close to shape and gradually start refining the fitment. Once I'm happy, I score it on the back and then I can cut it to a more accurate shape.
All right, so we have the inside all done. I have my lower section here. It's just sitting there for the time being. I'll weld up this whole seam later when I get it back onto the ground. But the basic shape is all there. But this is just an example of how you need to work on rust repair panels. So you can see I've cut this line here, but look at this gap all the way along. So it is touching this inner edge here and the other edge here, right next to the factory panel, and there is this massive gap the whole way. And that's just some of the things that you need to deal with these the rust repair panels. They're never perfect, and they just take a little bit of extra work. So I'm going to keep the door jamb correct, and then use the hammer and dolly to get the rest of it roughly into shape. Remembering that this inner bit is actually not seen. This is actually inside the wheel arch. So it's just this sort of, this tiny strip here that's the actual part that is visible when the vehicle's all together. So let's start getting the reinforcing plate ready for the inside of this.
So as with the other side, I need a reinforcing piece inside the rust repair panel where the front guard bolts to. So I start forming this by hand and preparing to weld it in. And I start tacking it in and then realise I didn't drill the bolts through beforehand, so I cut it off, drill it out and then tack it in. So of course my pneumatic punch has died, so I have to use the drill press to go through and make all my plug weld holes. So now I start tacking in the rust repair panel and just gradually working my way along. And you can actually see as I'm hammering into it, the top edge pops off again. It just shows how accurate these panels are. They're never perfect, and it takes a little bit of finessing. So I'm using a clamp here to hold the panel into place and sort of get everything lined up. And I found that I couldn't actually get a clamp over the top section to clamp things in, so I ended up using a piece of wood and clamping sort of above and below to get the pieces to line up nicely. Also here, using a screwdriver in the gap to sort of flex and make sure the panels are lined up nice and evenly as I go. And you can see me just hammer forming here with hammer and dolly and panel beating it all into shape to get it to fit.
All right, that is looking pretty good. It was a fair bit of work to try and sort of massage it as I went and attach it on, because as you saw, it had these massive gaps, so I had to sort of panel beat it as I went into place. So making sure I kept this edge straight, the door jamb edge, which is the bit that I really need to concentrate on keeping nice and neat. As I said, this part is actually under the guard, so it doesn't really matter, but I still want it to be nice and be the way it should be, and I'm quite happy with how it's turned out. So now I'm going to TIG weld up the join, and we should be able to call this corner all done. Yeah. All right, and we have the fourth corner done. The whole bottom four corners are all done. But next thing I've got to tackle is along this sill panel here. There's that rust there and a hole here. And it looks like obviously that center rust is from this reinforcing bar. So I'm gonna have to remake this. And that rust hole, it looks like there was some sort of repair or something along this edge, maybe a weld or something that was trapping water in this little edge, and that's what caused that. So let's just do these couple of little sill repairs. There's a couple over on the other side as well.
So thankfully these sills are made out of a thicker material than most of the body panels, so being able to use the 2mm steel plate in these sills, it makes it much easier to patch because there's a lot less warping when I weld it in. So by taking out a neat patch, it's easy to use that as the template, just cut it out and weld it in. And same again for the other patch.
All right, so we've got our patch repairs on the side. That's all looking good. But on the inside, I now have to remake this piece which curves around. If you can see the other side there, that's what it's got to do. So I've got to try and remake that piece over here.
So I start with a rough shape and I use the stretcher to start putting a curve into it. So I gradually trim it closer and closer, and once I'm happy with the fitment, I clean everything up and hit it with some weld through primer before welding it in for good.
that will definitely do the job. I didn't put the extra flange around the edge. Look, it's not ultimately that important. The flat sides are actually what really give the strength. So I am very happy with that. It's all open at the end so it can drain, and hopefully it won't fill up with dirt like it did last time and rust out. So I'm calling that side of the tray done. We just have to go over to this side now and fix those last couple of holes.
So last patch, same as before. And now I'm going around and cleaning up everything that I've previously done and hitting it with some etch primer just to protect it all before I clean it up and paint it properly. Then it's a matter of wrestling the cab back onto the dolly. And doing the last little welds in the jaw jambs. And then I can finally cut out the reinforcing.
All right, we have the cab back the right way up, and all of the bottom of the cab is looking fantastic. So there's a couple of little spots around the floor that I could still tackle at a later date, but I want to wait and see what I'm actually doing with the floor when we get to that before I sort of go crazy on those last tiny little spots. They're not really insignificant. But basically, the whole way round, the bottom of the cab, all around the windows, is all repaired. That is all looking absolutely fantastic. I am so happy with that. Like, I will show you again what it looked like when I first got it. And you can have a look at it now, and it is fantastic. I am very, very happy with the outcome of this. It's almost done to the level that I want it done, except for the roof. So that's the last bit that I have to tackle, but we'll have to wait for next time. So I think that must mean it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, in 1902, after the Henry Ford Company failed, Henry began a new company with a wealthy Detroit coal dealer called Alexander Malcolmson. Ford and Malcolmson Limited rented a factory, and Henry began work on designing an inexpensive vehicle for the masses. They contracted a machine shop owned by John and Horace Dodge to supply $160,000 worth of parts. Sales were slow, and a crisis arose when the Dodge brothers demanded payment for the first shipment. So a deal was struck, bringing in another group of investors, and Malcolmson convinced the Dodge brothers to accept part of the company as payment. The company was reincorporated as the Ford Motor Company on the 16th of June 1903, with Ford owning 25.5% of the company. Now, because of Ford's volatility, another investor, John S. Gray, was elected president of the company, with Ford remaining as the vice president. 2 years later, the company finally had success, and by July of 1905, the company's profits were around 300%, with about $300,000 being profit alone in 1905. In 1919, a mere 14 years later, Henry Ford, his wife Clara, and son Edsel bought out all of the minority shareholders for $105 million to own the company outright.
All right, we have most of the cab rust repaired. All the bottom's done, pretty much. The roof is pretty much all we've got left. I am so happy to sort of almost be done with this bit. Once the roof's done, then I can start cutting into the bus. And I'm so looking forward to doing that.
Hey. All right. Like, subscribe, let Jeff know what you think. And Patreon, of course, if you want to help us out. And yep. I think that is everything. It's starting to get chilly here.
And Patreon, you get to watch the
Patreon,
videos a day early.
And it's very appreciated.
Ad-free.
Thank you.
Yes.
All
right.
Take care.
We'll see you on the next one. See
Bye,
you guys.
Henry began a new company with a Detroit coal dealer called Malcolmson. Ford and Malcolmson Limited rented a office space.
No.
Ford and Malcolmson, blah, blah. And Henry began work on designing a vehicle for the masses. They contracted a machine shop owned by John and Horace Dodge. I'm having trouble tonight. They contracted a machine. I'm having a little constant trouble here. Sales were slow. I spat a lot then.